I find you have this interesting sound. I know you're this sort of one man band creating this.
Yeah, that's me.
How do you tend to describe the sound of Fear of Water?
It's difficult. It's a good question. I try to find myself, it's not even an intention. I just do find myself at this intersection of, I take music very seriously. I take Fear of Water very seriously. I obviously take the 25 plus years of dedication honing my skills on all of these instruments seriously. But I feel like I don't take myself as an artist too seriously. And part of that requires a level of a combination of humbleness and just being grounded enough in the reality of your environment, your community, and also the industry. And on the industry note, specifically enough to know that like I would never claim that I'm, trailblazing and breaking boundaries, and I'm going to give you something that you've never heard before. That being said, the level of scrutiny that I put each song through before it sees the light of day, and certainly before I'm approaching one of my collaborators, who are all people that I have a deeply ingrained amount of respect and admiration and just so much, I've followed all of their careers for so long that for me to come to them with anything less than what I feel is my best foot forward will never happen. So in terms of describing my sound, you the listener might not listen to it and be like, oh my God, this was painstakingly, meticulously crafted, but I want you to know that it is, and that it's important to me that within, I would say that my genre is modern, like in terms like radio terms, it's like active modern rock. Stylistically, I would define it as melodic hard rock. It's definitely at its core, it is interesting but consumable, approachable music that has like progressive elements, but not so progressive that it's difficult for like non-musicians to access. It's important for me to walk that line of like, this is something that you could sing along to, but also it's aggressive enough that it's, cathartic and you could scream it out in your car or at a live show if you wanted to. There are bands that I think that I've either been told that I have parallels to or that I think I do. And I could agree with that, but then pick it apart in other ways. I think I have elements of Seven Dust, of Periphery, of Breaking Benjamin, but I find myself to be very different in my own way while still not, again, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you've never heard anything like this before, but it is important for me that, if you listen to four Fear of Water songs, on the fifth one, I want you to be like, oh yeah, this is another Fear of Water song. Like I want the Fear of Water style to be undeniable, especially when I'm bringing in featured artists. And the artists that I've worked with so far run such the gamut in terms of their sound and their capabilities and what their band of origin sounds like, that it's important for me to be able to bring these people in, have them apply their flavor, which I specifically want from them, to my song, but not change the fact that like, oh yes, this is definitely a Fear of Water song. So I feel anyways, that was a very long-winded way of answering your question, that it is melodic hard rock with progressive elements.
Touch on some of those artists that people tend to compare you to, but who are some of the influences you had when you were growing up?
Um, it's interesting because I definitely had like, and this is pre-internet or like pre-ubiquity of internet where everyone has a cell phone and it's in their pocket and you can have direct access or perceived direct access to any artist that you want. So the perception I had of a lot of artists was through like interviews, both on like TV, so like favorite artists were like Nine Inch Nails, Foo Fighters, Tool, Stabbing Westward, and like all those bands were released, like tour VHS tapes, and you could find like bootleg stuff and like, reading articles in Spin Magazine and Rolling Stone, or even like underground stuff that you could only get regionally. And while I'm going to use three bands as an example here, but so I love Nine Inch Nails, Foo Fighters, and Seven Dust. But above and beyond that, I have such deep, literal, lifelong admiration for of those bands: Trent Reznor, Dave Grohl, and Clint Lowry. Um, all three of them have, since the beginning of my musical journey, helped me get my head wrapped around the idea of being a multi-instrumentalist within this genre. And, they've all taken very different paths in terms of like how that's applied. Nine Inch Nails has a different, the band itself in terms of touring is almost completely different on every single album, every single tour, whereas Foo Fighters, barring a tragedy, has, been pretty much the same band for a long time. Clint Lowry, founding member of Seven Dust, but then goes through his trials and tribulations and leaves for 3 albums and then comes back triumphantly and really has his life on track. Like all these guys have taken these different paths. They all have their different genres. They've all gone through the loss of loved ones, divorce, addiction, record labels, getting signed and then having that label collapse. They've all gone through basically came out of the era that was the absolute peak of the music industry, which is essentially late 80s, early 90s. When that hair metal and Nirvana were both in the spotlight and people were buying tons of physical media. And you could literally become a millionaire easily on your first album in the music industry. They've survived the complete destruction of that and the introduction of Napster, and they've all pivoted. They've all, Clinton Lowry has like 5 different bands that he's done. Trent Reznor's doing, Academy Award winning scores for a variety of different soundtracks from like David Fincher films to Pixar films and everything in between. Dave Grohl is a New York Times bestselling author and has done multiple documentaries and has worked with other artists. So like, while I love their bands respectively, the what was driving me so much when I was a young kid to like pursue my own path and learn as many instruments as possible, when I realized that I guess I was genetically predisposed that I could like pick up a guitar, and it kind of just made sense to me, even though I had no lessons. I didn't have sheet music, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to read it. This is not to date myself, but this is pre-YouTube, so I couldn't like sit down and be like, how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit, and then like watch a kid, walk me through power chords. They all inspired me to take an unconventional route, and I knew that I could be. I think it's pretty easy to think like your music career, especially early on, like the first thing you have to do is start a band, right? You have to like have the band, which is making the songs, and then the songs need to be performed live, and you need to have an aesthetic around the band with a catchy name. It's all of the like the package that you're selling. And I've been for 25 years not going that route. I mean, and when I'm talking about like since like middle school and high school, but like that's never been my focal point. It's always been like, I want to learn as many instruments as possible. I want to understand songwriting and craftsmanship in as many different genres as possible. As the technology progressed and became more affordable and attainable, it's like, I want to learn about home recording and production and mastering as much as possible. I want to work with other artists. I want to understand the democratic creative process so I can further appreciate what I'm doing on my own and like get the best of both worlds. And now in its current iteration, again, just to answer your question, like these 3 guys have just inspired me so much. And still to this day, like it's arguably all 3 of those men are vastly more accomplished now, 20 years later, than they were at the time when I was having these like foundational moments of like, holy shit, music is my life and this is what I want to pursue. So I feel very fortunate to still have those individuals as figures that not only I admire, but I've actually had the opportunity to like have a conversation with Dave Grohl. And one of my next singles is with Clint Lowry. Still have to check off the Trent Reznor box, but like it's profound to me to be sitting here right now talking with you about that. And if you told whatever 16-year-old Dave that we'd be having this conversation in 20 years, I'd be like, that's not a real thing. And being into, so like Nine Inch Nails is like approachable industrial. Foo Fighters is pretty straightforward melodic rock that has alternative elements that they've dabbled in other things. Seven Dust very much so like melodic hard rock / metal. Loving all 3 of those bands has definitely like expanded the tendrils of my musical curiosities into so many other bands, especially again, going back to the interviews, like reading interviews with Dave Grohl about the like punk bands and funk bands that inspired him as a songwriter and a drummer. Like I would listen to, or like, you know, Trent Reznor, what he was into in the late 70s, early 80s, the beginning of what would become industrial and new wave, 80s electro synth music. I've gotten such a they've been such a kickoff point for a rich musical life for me, and I'm so appreciative that they're still in my life, and I've had the opportunity to interact with them, and hope to do more in the future.
We have this wonderful single One Day out now, which features Heidi from Butcher Babies. How
Yes.
did the two of you connect and craft the song?
So I'll start with the crafting the song. 99% of the time when I'm writing something, I'm in, this room or this alternate studio that I have, and I'm either writing on guitar or piano, and I don't have anything in mind. I mean, I feel on a daily basis the full range of the human experience, just like most other people, but I don't sit down and be like, I'm angry, time to write an angry song. I sit down with the intention of songwriting, but it can start in a very fragmented way in terms of like I want to explore a new tuning, or I want to explore. I haven't done like a kind of 6/8 swing syncopated groove in a while or ever. Like I want to experiment with that, or I'm gonna make a weird time signature drum beat first with no melody or groove in mind, and then write around that. But 99% of the time, I'm starting with music, and then when that's done or feels like it has some level of cohesive completion to it, I'm like, okay, what emotion does that elicit from me? And then I write lyrics around that. To answer your question, as far as one day goes, it's a very rare scenario for me where I already had like an emotional theme from my life that I wanted to, I needed a cathartic release about this. My therapist calls anticipatory grief, in terms of the a reality of our mutual human journey is that most of us, again, barring some sort of tragedy, most of us will lose our parents in our lifetime. And even though that is a nearly ubiquitous global experience, suffering is relative to the person feeling the suffering. And I just get incredibly overwhelmed thinking about the inevitability of my mom's passing. And there's a lot of historical and trauma stuff that goes into why. I mean, everyone has like a vested interest in like the health of their mom, but I basically have like two parents worth of relationships in just my mom. My dad's a horrible person, and so I have a lifetime of investing essentially like two parents worth of relationships into my mom. So like, and she's a wonderful part of my life, and I'm very happy for every day that we still have together. But I just have always felt like it's an inevitability. It's on the horizon. And there have been scenarios where I feel like it has impeded upon my ability to enjoy the present because I am dreading the future. And I think I'm not unique in that. It doesn't have to be about a parent, but I feel like, whether it's like fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of what you can't control, a lot of times in our society stops people from going for it, or even just stops people from being happy and appreciating what they have. So especially at the time that I wrote this song, this was like a really um, palpable emotional state that I was dealing with, in a very undesired way on a regular basis. And I was like, I need to get this out on paper and then make music around it that is reflective of. So in the same way, like with my 99% style, where it's like, if I'm writing music first and what the music elicits what emotion, I need to do that in the reverse, where it's like, okay, I have this emotional palette, I'm writing lyrics around it, and now I need to have music that matches that aesthetic. So I wrote the music for that song with the producer Sahaj Tikatin, who's also the lead singer of Raw, and I am the drummer of Raw. And I really just poured my soul out to him about like what I'm feeling. He had actually recently, dealt with loss in the family, and he could, understand where I was coming from. And we went through a lot of kind of like sonic landscape type things. There's none of this had anything to do with like, let's write a hook. let's get something that's catchy. We were laser focused on like what musically can capture the essence of everything that you just told me and what you're dealing with, and sadly what is eventually, inevitably going to happen to all of us. So super proud of how that turned out. I'm biased, but I really feel like from the very first chord of that song, you're like, oh, you feel it. And so mission accomplished there. I knew from the beginning that with all of these songs that I'm doing, they're all collaborations with, really talented featured artists that I respect and admire. And I knew that a female singer on the song would be great because I wanted to reflect the dynamic between my mother and myself. And we had not a long list, but we had a list of different performers in mind, and she was on the list, but I was initially hesitant because Butcher Babies is they're so heavy, and she's so awesome at that, like just being a 12-foot monster on stage and just she's an incredible presence and energy and has such great ferocity that I didn't know if she would be able to leave that comfort zone and come to this place of vulnerability. And I'm thrilled to say that she proved me just unbelievably wrong. I think her contributions to this song made it everything that it could ever be. And she's also just been a wonderful creative partner and even marketing partner in terms of like, she's been even this wasn't, she doesn't owe me anything, but she believes in the song so much and she's proud to have her name, on it and to have contributed to it creatively, that she's been, ever since the songs came out, she's been so great in a variety of different ways of getting it out to the Butcher Baby fans and posting on her socials and getting me connected to other people that can help out. And, it's really been a cathartic healing process. And so, I'm very thankful to her on a musical, creative level, but also a personal, spiritual, psychological level as well. So I'm really proud of it. Definitely suggest people go check that song out. I think even people who are not into, like, this has crossover potential. If you don't like hard rock or metal, or like screaming is too much for you, like this song is a very approachable tune for fans of a wide variety of different kinds of music. So definitely go check that out on any, whatever your favorite streaming or download platform is.
What kind of response have you been getting from fans and how they tend to connect with the song?
Really good. I think something interesting that I did with this one is I worked with a professional modern dance ballet company and had a lyric video made that had a custom, like there's custom choreography done to the song by this phenomenal choreography group called Emphas. And that creative process, very similar to like what I was just telling you about working with Sahaj, was very similar, where we sat down, they heard the song, they loved it. We went through every single line and talked about like what that means, where it comes from, how I envision. I'm not a choreographer, I'm not a dancer at all, but like they shared their interpretation and vision of it. I shared mine and my feedback to that. There's a few different dance pieces that are out there that I really like and pulled inspiration from, and they were able to emulate that in their own way and make it specific to the song. And incredibly happy with how that turned out. And I think it just, again, like with Heidi's contribution and Emphasis contribution, it's just like, it's this well-rounded piece of just clearly articulating a really difficult subject for me. So yeah, the response has been awesome. It's been, doing incredibly well on streaming. And I have a radio campaign that just started this week where it's being sent out to alternative stations, which is a first for me. I've really been, in the FM and Octane world of like active rock, modern rock, hard rock, metal, whatever. Um, but yeah, so my previous single, Codependent Parasites, featuring Elias Soriano of Nonpoint, did really, really well. It debuted on Octane in December. It has over 1 million streams across all of the platforms, and it had been climbing various charts in the US for FM radio play for 14 weeks, and hit, number 10 on the SMR top 50 in February. And that was my first like real go of like getting out into, like, that's the first real airplay I've ever received. And fortunately I have a good foot in the door and have established good relationships with all of these FM stations across the country, and also with their fan bases. I mean, like, their listeners is what kept it on the air for 14 weeks, not me being like, hey man, please play my song more. Like that's not how radio works. They have to have like positive feedback from their listeners to say like, we want to keep hearing this or we want more from this artist. So anyways, there's a good, like the foot in the door is there now that I can just come to them with the next piece and be like, all right, you guys love this single. Now here's the song with Heidi from Butcher Babies. Hits some different emotional notes here, but you know, it's still undeniably Fear of Water. So already getting good feedback from radio stations there. And again, Heidi and the Butcher Baby family and band and fans and everything have all been really supportive of it. So I'm excited to see where this goes. You know, it's out of my hands at this point, aside from doing something like this and talking about it and posting about it on social. But you know, I hope the music speaks for itself and stands on its own, and we'll see.
With one day out now, are you working on an EP or maybe a full album for Fear of Water coming shortly? Or are you focused here on some singles just to sort of get the hype up for the band and then work
Yeah.
your way up into more music?
Yeah, so I've been doing this. I've been releasing music since 2005, and there's been huge gaps in there because of life. Like it's, you know, I was unbelievably poor in my late teens and 20s. And so the idea of just like getting into the studio and recording an EP was an absolute impossibility. So yeah, I've released music in, you know, spurts throughout life. And, you know, fortunately I'm in a better position later in life now. And I'm able to be releasing more music more consistently at a much higher level than have ever done before. But a difference is that I'm certainly evolving with just the realities of the streaming world that we're in. People have shorter attention spans. And because I'm not a super established entity with an army of fans who are hungry for entire albums worth of content, I'm really, for the foreseeable future, just focusing on doing these individual singles, each have their own unique featured performer on it that is perfect for that song, and work collaboratively with them on a one song at a time basis to make sure that this is everything that it needs to be and can be. Release that, let it live its full life before putting out the next one. And I mean, I already have there's like 7 more songs of that nature that are already in the queue. The next one being with Clint Lowry from Seven Dust. But yeah, working on many more collaborations. I'm starting 3 new songs with Joseph McQueen, who's worked with Killswitch Engage, Howard Jones, all of his solo stuff, Bad Wolves, a lot of other really phenomenal bands in my genre. And I'm just going to keep working with new featured artists. I keep wanting doing, you know, not even an EP, but just like 2 to 4 songs with a variety of different engineers and producers that I have a ton of respect for, and just see where that takes me. I'm not I'm not on a timeline. I don't, since, you know, the a plus side, I suppose, of like not having a record label supporting me is I can do this on my own schedule. I'm not restricted to like a certain stable of artists to reach out to for possible collaborations. I'm not beholden to anyone. Obviously, there's a lot of like support and resources that could come from a label. That would be great. And maybe I get there someday, maybe I don't. But in the meantime, I'm just staying the course, and I'm gonna hit, you know, within the rock realm, I want to explore as much of that genre as possible. Everything from super intimate, bare bones acoustic to like absolute rip your face off metal, and everything in between, while still being like, this is an, you know, undeniably Fear of Water song, which is difficult. It's difficult to do that while, you know, exploring all of this different sonic territory. But even with the stuff that is, you know, being mixed now, and having seen the response of the handful of collaborations I've already released, I'm incredibly optimistic about what's in the future. Like it's gonna be good.
What would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of Fear of Water?
Thank you. There are a lot of people who, especially on my Facebook community, have been around for like a long time, and it's cool. Anyone who's been a part of my social community knows that I respond to every single message, every single comment, even everything from like haters, compliments, questions, suggestions, whatever. Like social media is meant to be social. I don't use it as like I have new music, consume the music, do the work and get it out to, like, I want to talk about it. I'm here to have a conversation. And there are, there's a group of a few hundred, I would say. Now I have, I'm verified on Instagram and have a big Facebook following, and I'm appreciative of everyone, even someone who just joins after listening to this conversation. But there are some OG people who've been around for like 10 years, who've been on this journey with me. And it might not seem like it because I haven't met a lot of them, but I know them. I obviously like recognize their names and their face. I feel a connection to them, and it matters to me. Like their support of me when I was doing what might seem like nothing is a big part of what fueled me to keep going to the point of where I'm at now. So I'm incredibly appreciative of anyone who takes the time. There's basically unlimited music out there, and we only have so many hours in a day, and more important things to do in life, and a limited attention span. So like if you are giving me a fraction of your time to listen to my music, I'm telling you that I'm going to do my best to make it worth your time. And I appreciate the people who have met me in the middle there and continue to do so as I continue this creative journey. So thank you.